Hey, that's our engineer. That's why y'all come through so good when y'all call in. And in-house, we got our most trusted. I'm not gonna call her warden. I'm not gonna call it. I'll slide on the landlord stuff and all that. But as you know, as you see us on the internet, on Facebook, this is what we do: speak our truth, bring our vision, harness our power, and take care of business. That's what it's all about. Because we're all trying to live. You know, in studio, we don't have an unfamiliar guest, a guest who's never been here before. But before I introduce her, also with her is an additional, I'm going to say guest. She's an accompanist right now. And they'll get a chance to introduce themselves. But, you know, we're going to be talking about housing. There's all kind of angles to housing, you know. And one of the ones we don't talk about enough is like when you dealing in one of those situations where you got to deal with a scandalous landlord, and when your political representation for your area is a little slow, not even little slow, just absent and shuck and jive. I know listeners, you know what I'm talking about. A lot of the political offices that run wanting your vote and talking about how they're going to pay attention to your issue, you can't even get them to respond half the time unless you just an okie dokie person. It's a shame, but we got to do better with our political representatives because they're not serving, they're misserving when they avoid speaking to the people. Their offices appear to be weak. You know, if you call the office, it's like everybody got to wait to speak to the political person who never gets back. And then the person in the office is faced with having to try and call you back and act like they are dealing with something. We're in a bad situation. I'm just gonna call it like it is. I don't smile at the politicians just to smile at them. I'm smiling at them when they do good and do right. But we got horrible situations around housing. That's what we're going to be talking about today. You can join us. You already heard Austin tell you how to get here, 716-837-1112. And with that said, we can go to our guests. We can get our guests
Absolutely.
to introduce
So
themselves.
we'll go ahead and keep the get to the guests, right? Get to the meat of it. I know the listeners are excited to hear. Today we are joined by Miss Ashley Brunner, a familiar guest who's been talking about many issues in Buffalo, but like we said, today is going to come talking about affordable housing. How are you doing today, Ms. Brunner?
I am good. Thank you for having me back.
Hold the mic
You
up
can
to your
put it-
mouth.
you can
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
There we go. I'm generally too loud. You know, Jen.
Yeah.
So.
And you
Is
got to
this better?
introduce your co-pilot.
So my co-pilot for the day is my sister, Lorraine. So we work together to co-parent her children
Cool.
that live with me here in housing in Buffalo. I've previously taken the kids to council chambers to discuss the magnitude of, the impact of what it's like to be separated from your
Yeah.
parent due to a variety of social issues, one of the most impactful being housing. If we don't have people in secure housing, in spaces that are safe, in spaces that are controlled and managed appropriately by either the landlord, the management property, whatever the owner, the entity might be, then we're really not doing a service to families as a whole. So
You got that
when I
right.
speak about my housing situation today, it's always from a position of how it impacts the children that I raise.
Yeah, talking real experience, y'all. We're not talking about I heard or I read it
Right.
somewhere. We're talking about walking through the fire. But before you go, I don't know if Lorraine is gonna get on mic. I'm hoping she might and say hi, hello. You know, I'm here, and all throughout the conversation, I hope she'll feel free to join in.
She's always free to say what she would like.
Okay.
I will not prevent her.
So don't you want to say hi or hello? Yeah. Go
The
ahead.
mic all in her face.
Yeah, I'm sorry about that. Yeah, just
Everyone
pull it on
is so
tape. There you go.
curious.
Hi, I'm Lorraine.
All right.
Ashley's sister.
Well, welcome, Lorraine, Ashley's sister. We all good. Look, it's family here. Anybody that come in the room,
Right.
automatically family. We speak nothing but truth. It's all over the table. We speak truth.
Right.
And we leave it on in here. You don't have to raise your hand. You can jump in. It's just like if we sitting in the living room, we talking and carrying on. But back to you, Ashley. Let me also say, listener, there are a lot of angles to what you're going to hear today because we need to be clear. There are a lot of not so healthy hands in the situation,
Right.
and we all know it. So the story you're going to hear is probably your story too. But what you're also going to hear is what you can do and how to push back and what we must do.
Correct. So I live in Kaisertown. I live Clinton and Fenton. We have a storefront that occupies the front of a rear apartment. So in the storefront that is occupied, it generally has our bedroom. It has like the TV, other things in it. In the rear of the apartment are the kids' bedrooms, things like that. There's a large fenced-in privacy backyard, like with a fence, nice trees, things like that. So we've had a lovely experience per se as far as the layout of the house. I wouldn't complain about that one bit. One of my major problems is that the landlord has repeatedly promised to repair the property. And this was after I moved from South Buffalo over to Kaisertown. And this is before I made any real associations in Kaisertown with block clubs or reaching out, through even Brian, knowing him or anything like that. Like I was just brand new to the area, so to speak. And she was very willing to have us come in with promises that she would repair the property. This was in about 2020. So lots of promises at the time, I'm sure, from lots of people considering PPP loans that were floating around. My landlord was getting a couple here and there through the maintenance company for her LLC, which is the management company for her properties. She was getting them through a variety of other means, and that's verifiable information, not just from her telling us, but my husband and I can back that as, well as my sibling being here. And one of the big problems for me is that as a tenant, I've been subjected to waiting for someone to get around to fixing my issue, right? You're expected to pay the rent, no excuses, no conversation, no asking more than what you should. And you should be very grateful and gracious if anybody continues to let you live where you're living. The strong reality is that's just simply not the case. And it really just boils down to what you are willing to allow someone else to do. From 2020 to like 2023, the housing situation became more dilapidated over time. This is an older storefront that was purchased where flooring was never repaired. It's ceramic, old school Buffalo tiling that's ripped and split due to tree roots from the backyard that are seeping through and causing this foundational crack. At one point, it was recommended to me that filling it with joint compound personally might be something that would fix it, but I was advised by inspections, i.e. Tom Carter, that I should not do that. And this is down the line after 2023 when I initiate inspections into some of my woes. Now, I guess the main idea of discussing like how the housing dilapidates over time is that it's not a secret. I held a canvassing event for India in the house. That was in the storefront. It's a cool space, but you can clearly see the floors are falling apart. As you head towards the rear of the apartment, the laminate is ripped up, so is the wood. Those are things that people were walking over when they were there at the time. The bathroom at this point in time is completely in shambles. Before I had a sink that wasn't even stable. Now I have a stable sink, but I have flooring that's coming up that's all lead-based. The paint is lead-based. Everything is falling apart around the house because instead of repairing the house with the appropriate funds when you had them, you chose to let us stay and do zero repairs.
So the owner of the place, the place is have lead-based paint?
There's lead-based paint in the bathroom that's peeling up. Now, there was a disclosure that I signed that said the landlord wasn't aware of any lead-based paint past. I don't recall the specific year, but I did. That was something I signed in my lease. Like, oh, okay, well, she's unaware. So if it does pop up, I'm not going to hold her accountable. However, if you're notified through inspections with pictures and us telling you.
And what happened when
nothing. So nothing has happened. So during this whole time, I started to really kick up dust about the condition of the apartment after the blizzard when everybody had passed away in a variety of ways. And we had a lot of snow in Kaisertown. One of our big problems is that we're the last to be cleared. That's a common complaint of Kaisertown residents and residents towards that end of Lovejoy. They become very irritated because the side streets are all but, it's just a not even thought of. And we have a lot of elderly people that are in Kaisertown that are waiting to see some sort of snow plan that involves assistance with them getting out. So we've got a mess over there. You know what I mean? No one is assisting us with a single thing. What
area? Kaisertown is South Buffalo?
No, that's Lovejoy. It's right next to East Clinton Library.
Gotcha.
So like my landlord's management company is directly across the street from the library. She does not, no management is sent to the house to fix it. I've had maintenance ask me when I would leave, but nothing's been made to be repaired. And at this point in time, it becomes really problematic. So like when people were dying during the blizzard, I tag in Brian. Like, look at everything that's happening. I'm sitting in my house with broken windows, dilapidated floors, big gaping holes, leaks, water, walls that are have succumbed to water seeping into the walls, like the drywall. It's brittle. I had a lot of issues. And Brian sent out one letter.
Brian
Bullman, Councilman Bullman, last year. This was February 6, 2023. And it just says that he's been notified of the situation. It was brought to his attention regarding the property at Clinton and reports of allegedly improper heating conditions, and it's impacting the quality of life. And there are alleged issues related to health, safety, and exterior maintenance. So
who gave him that?
Brian Bullman wrote this letter, which is within the city charter for him to reach out to any landlord or property owner to advise that there are issues going on. So he has the ability to do it.
Did something alert him as to your property, or have you reached out to him? I went on
Twitter. No one was listening to me on Facebook. I went on Twitter. When I went on Twitter, I kept repeatedly tagging the Common Council in images of my house and complaining, and then explicitly tagging council members. And then it triggered Brian to give me a phone call on the ride home. And then Brian advised me that, well, I can make sure that I send letters to the landlord. Brian's office called me back the following day to let me know that my landlord had a multitude of addresses, and was I aware that she also had shell company addresses sprinkled throughout the city? I said I was. He says, okay, well, I'm going to send the letters there. He said, I'm also going to call 311. You can call 311, and so can anyone else. So he calls 311, and that triggers Tom Carter from Inspections, who's the head of inspections, to come to my property. That's following this February 6th notice. Tom Carter comes out, walks through the entirety of the property, and he talks about the condition and how horrible it is. He has family members that he helps to raise too, and he understands the severity of me requesting inspectors to come in and speaking about how bad the property is, and that he would reach out to the landlord. Tom Carter followed up with me 3 times, okay? And this was from February, March of 2023 through May. And he has to, by law, reach out to her 3 times and give her an opportunity to try to remedy the issues. What happened was she fixed some, but not all. And from there, if you can see on that page, you might have to scroll up or to the side, Jim. Mm-hmm. It'll show you the city charter mandate. It's like in black. It says what the rule is for when they're, here, you want some help? It says what the rule is for when when they do the inspection report, that they're supposed to, please note that if you do not respond as hereby directed to this notice within a 30-day time period, it will be assumed that you do not intend to comply with the directive, and this matter will be referred to prosecution by the City Court of Buffalo.
Did they respond?
No.
And then what happened?
Nothing, no further prosecution. So months went by and Thomas Carter didn't do anything additional. I made calls. He said the landlord is saying that you're not letting maintenance in, which is not true. Matt and I keep excellent records through the phone. And we also have sent her a variety of letters. Throughout this time frame that we're arguing about her fixing this property that she knows that she has said she would fix, I'm repeatedly being retaliated against by being evicted. If I'm reporting the habitability issues, she's trying to evict me. So if I call the city, it's an immediate, I want you out, there's no discussion. Recently, the issues have gotten so bad with the property. And again, I only got a one-time letter from Brian. I have asked for a follow-up letter. As you know, we've passed February 6, 2024. The least that could have been done was a annual letter of sorts to remind her to take care of it. But no, that was never done. What ends up happening at this point is that all things, because they were never fixed to begin with, are falling apart at a rapid rate. The heating in the front is so terrible. My sister comes to visit and see the kids, and it's like you can see your breath in the storefront area. But when you go towards the back of the house and cross the threshold into the kitchen, it's extremely warm. Now there's two heating systems, right, for this area, one for the back and one for the front. But the one for the front and the storefront needs to be maintenance. It needs to be made sure that there's no massive drafts. I have a door that has huge gaping pieces in it where you can lock it and you can still move it when you lock it. I mean, these are violations, requirements that landlords should take care of. And it puts me in an uncomfortable situation when I'm trying to show my sister that you have to advocate for yourself and you have to stand up for yourself in order to make your life better. And then I'm here with her children and I can't advocate hard enough to get a woman who lives in Allentown comfortably surrounded by media. And I can't stress that enough because that's one thing I certainly haven't pressed the button on. She doesn't even know who her neighbors are. So like the fact that I just haven't opened my door for reporters to come in their winter coats to check out my house is crazy. And it's really just one of the last things that's almost left to do. Like, what am I really left to do? I'm trying to show my family there's a better way to live. And I'm in the city preaching it. I'm practicing what I've been taught, but like, nothing is happening from it. I have to threaten litigation. And
well, yeah, you do. And I wouldn't even say threaten it once you say it.
I mean,
but it's costly.
It's costly, but there are attorneys that will work with you. And I won't like go into detail for what pertains to our family, but litigation privately is certainly an action we've sought out. But one of the things I want to be clear with, when I called inspectors to say, hey, like my heating is failing, things are going on, like she's withdrawn more petitions from court, like her attorney keeps withdrawing petitions because I understand my position as a tenant. If I'm in good faith reporting things, how can you bully me? How can you truly kick me out if there's proof provided that I've let you know?
Have you been in court yet?
I've been in court 3 times behind this.
And what they say?
The last petition was withdrawn because the response that I wrote to the court made it abundantly clear that her and her attorney were engaging in a concerted effort to remove us from the property by being fraudulent, by retaliating, and by denying us maintenance. When I went to housing court this last time, elder law represented me. I thought it was originally Attorney Kaufman. It's the other gentleman's name is fleeting me. At the end of the court case, he told me, Mrs. Brunner, don't get in the elevator with the landlord's attorney. And I said, why? Like, Jim, come on. I said, why? Why would we not get in what's a little arguing? I don't care, but why not get in there? Oh, I just think it's in your best interest to wait. So I wait. I don't get in the elevator with the attorney that time. We come back to court and he walks past me and doesn't speak, but immediately goes to tell the assigned counsel that I had in a very whispered fashion that he'd be withdrawing his petitions. And it's kind of like, well, gee, I wonder why. You get these tenants out here that go to tenant organizations and learn about the expansion of the tenant rights in 223-B that explains to them if you ever are called in for a holdover, it's the landlord does not have to provide a reason for the holdover. You can provide a reason if you believe it's retaliatory. Just make sure you can show it. And if I'm reporting things in good faith because I have minor children in my home that are not biologically mine, that I am in a court agreement with, then what would ever make a property manager or a landlord feel as though whether I was late, whether I didn't pay, you don't have the ability to come over or the legal right or wherewithal to do so. In fact, if I have water issues or heating issues, that's a no-go. You're allowed in. That's emergent. So this weekend, my nephew celebrated his 9th birthday. Shout out to Paris. You met Paris.
Mm-hmm.
My apartment was 47 degrees. So we booked a hotel and he swam and he ate cake and we had a blast. But what was I supposed to do? That was
Where is the case now?
My husband got in touch with her this morning. I assume perhaps she's heard from other attorneys privately. And now, do you need space heaters? Do you need other things? Well, we need repairs.
You can't share a name. Well, don't share a name.
I won't share a name.
No. I noticed on the letter that Boylan wrote, it was to a LLC.
Yes, let's talk about it.
Person's name, and which means it gets a little bit more kind of like, what's going on here?
Well, because people got PPP loans and created a company underneath their original LLC, under their umbrella. And then they involved third parties allegedly and give them $30,000, which was explicitly taken out in the name of, I don't know, Kaisertown Equity Group, which, also had another loan taken out. And I don't know the maintenance company's name. And I don't see how you could take out a PPP loan to secure maintenance when maintenance hasn't been to my house in 3 years. You got to talk about it.
With the experience you have had thus far, and like with people listening, what would be some things you would want them to know if they have a similar situation, or some things they need to know that's important if they're going to challenge a landlord on properties that are insufficient?
One of the things I learned very quickly, and I'm a former debt collector, so this is the piece of advice that I would give everybody. New York State is a one-party consent recording state. I would recommend, if you feel as though that you're being put in a position where you're being horrendously gaslit, you start recording these conversations. Last year I was on the receiving end of listening to a lot of recordings that were coming my way through variously blocked numbers. And I realized at that point the power of what people say and how it could be played later. And then I learned, instead of being a victim to it, I will gladly participate. So if I'm raising someone else's children, I'm accountable to her as well. So never, ever will I be made to be a liar about the housing situation. And really, what I would expect people to do is go to these tenant organizations. Make sure if you're talking to your landlord, record that conversation. You don't have to make that landlord aware of that. They're not a police officer. That's not entrapment. You make sure you document everything. Take photos, take videos. You write in a journal if you have to.
What was it that you mentioned? The New York State calls for a one-sided. What is that?
New York State just enacted like an open door for tenants to litigate against landlords, property managers, and maintenance. I was given a QR code when I went to the last round of housing court prior to this one that I'm in. And they said that you would be able to submit all of your work and you could go ahead and upload it. And that would initiate a private lawsuit between the tenant and the property group. And New York State would get involved to litigate that and see if there was a fault that this landlord or property manager or group has been in fault with. So I've sought out a lot of different fronts at this point because I've been quite vocal. I've asked for help. I repeatedly wrote her for help. Last week I called inspections. Environmental specialist Aaron Figueroa told me, why don't I just get the F out?
Wait a minute, say that again.
Environmental specialist
And we're at City Hall?
City Hall, Aaron Figueroa advised me that I have been denying the landlord entry to repair things, and I should just get the F out.
How can they prove that? I mean,
It would not matter if that man felt like I should have left a year ago. His feelings are irrelevant. Your job is to stick to that charter. Stop being emotional. Get your job done.
Yeah,
That's what it
but
boils
I mean,
down
like
to.
even in the for an allegation like that, I mean, like, so it isn't. Well, I just went. If I'm the landlord, so I went there and you wouldn't let me in. Who's to verify without some independent witnesses?
Right. Like we have cameras. So when I see you sending someone over to give an estimate for a roof, but you're not checking out my intermittent leaks, you're not checking out the holes in the floor, you're not dealing with the busted glass window that's still in the kitchen that's exposed, that's still on the report that she is not fixed. When you walk into housing court and they call your file number, they start the clock and they advise if there are habitability issues to put on the record, you're to say them now. I say them every time.
You know, as you talk, I'm thinking, Austin, you know, for young folks who are starting to get into their own housing in some way, that not knowing how muddled the waters are, you know, stuff like this could try somebody off the edge. Lorraine, how you doing?
Okay. Housing is crazy anyways. It's like they know that like there's a housing crisis, and for me it's like we went into the pandemic and stuff like that, you know, and it was hard to find housing, and you pretty much are looking for like a quick way to get into an apartment because credit and everything else, you know, sometimes it's bad, sometimes you don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
But like as far as what my sister said, take pictures, don't accept. I know like sometimes we just settle for stuff because we need a place to stay, especially if we have kids. You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, we got a house, but you know, this doesn't work or this is broke, but it's okay because we have a house. Like, it shouldn't be like that. And I feel like landlords take advantage of certain situations, and then you know, you end up being screwed at the end. And I know a lot of people who a lot of landlords that don't even sign actual leases anymore. It's just hearsay, here's the keys, and it's month to month. And now they feel like they can do whatever they want, you know.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Take pictures and, you know, just make sure you.
You ever hear Austin, any of your young peers talking about similar situations with housing, or what is the conversation around housing with them?
I think that first off, I know we're going to a commercial break in a second, so I'm just going to start with, I think it's a big issue for younger people.
Hey, we can go to break now, and then we can come back and you pick up on it.
Come back.
Stay with us, y'all. We be back. We're going to go to break.
And you're still on live while you're on the break.
Yeah,
So.
we want to I want to hear you talk about how the view from young folks and how all this begins to swirl together, and like, wow.
We got a lot of parents, right, in the city that are in similar situations like we're in. So we're in a large space, which accommodates a large family. So it's been said to me, we'll just saddle up and get out. And it's like, well, no. If the law is set up for the judge to hear my side as well, then I would like for that to be heard. But I think it's incredible for someone to go to eviction court as much as I have with one landlord, and for me to bat it down every time. And I want to be clear, it's getting batted down because you don't want me to tell the truth about why this is not fixed. You don't want me to be noticed. You don't want me to be honest about the predatory nature of it, which is likely what other tenants are experiencing. Landlords who took out a multitude of loans and then never fix these properties.
And you know, the terrible thing, something I was saying earlier about our politicals, and how just really jive they've been in taking care of business. I know they mean well, but they don't do well on the important issues. And housing is one of the major ones. And most of the time, you don't see them getting in where the real battle is. They always act like they're working on something to make it better, but you never see the results of it. A lot of them like to talk about affordable housing, but they don't do anything to make sure the housing you have is affordable and proper and livable. And you're just weak on that. It shouldn't be the community just crying. It should be the political leaders out in front developing legislation, ensuring that the laws are carried out, and dealing with the crookedness that exists in City Hall with some workers who act like they pit bulls that keep you away and the guard the electors from being disturbed. I mean, it's shameful, and that's what the people got to deal with.
My councilman's a realtor. When I was asking about missing tasers, he said, I can help you with your landlord. She got a $50,000 revitalization grant. Well, it always bothered me. Like, how did you know that she got that? He's a realtor. When I'm living in, my house was 52 degrees the other night at 11:58. I sent you a picture. I tagged him underneath that post and I said, I hope your family is much warmer than mine. How do you even feel good at night? All I asked you to do is send a letter. It's really all I asked.
Indeed.
All right, so we're hopping back on the air. If you want to re-ask the question,
yeah,
talking about
as Lorraine was talking about how housing is bad, and we know that, and with all that we've been talking about the challenges, I'm wondering, how does the housing conversation go with young people? What do they think about the troubles that come with it? I guess the biggest part is getting some housing that they can afford. But
yeah, I would say that's a wide question, because I think, taking a step back, I think it's a select few young people who are really thinking about housing because it is so expensive. It's like I know you want to get out the house, but it's like, by what means, on what terms? Do I want to live? Like, do I want to really be able to live and enjoy myself? So I think for those people, young people that can really look at housing, I know young people of my own that are renting and in that situation, like, they're not even in a position to look at discrimination. Like I said, they're spending so much time just to afford housing. I got someone who's 19, 20 working doubles almost every day, right? And so you're just like, how are you supposed to thrive when you're trying to survive? So I think that housing, affordable housing, that word is very important in the overall scheme of it. On the flip side, when you talk about the actual backside, once I have the house and how it's maneuvered, one friend, the landlord, was thinking about selling the house. He didn't know what that was going to look like. And again, his response was just, I'll do the best that I can until I get to that point, because I think it's just so expensive. And that's kind of the problem, right? I can do these things when I know that you have no other options. I can do these things when I know that it's either this or nothing. And a lot of kids, whether it's pride or whatever the case may be, if they don't want to go home, or that's not an option, no longer have no other choice. So I think that is just a difficult problem as a whole. And I think that, we have organizations like Home on here. I don't know if you went to Home and spoken to them.
Right.
We have organizations like that as well that are supposed to be on our side, and I believe are on our side. They do good work. But even within that, if those organizations don't work how they're supposed to, or if even the litigation for these organizations that are built on isn't, like, if they're not, the organization can only do so much, right? So if it's a legal side or a political issue, the organization can keep advocating too, but now we just have more people yelling at a wall.
Yeah.
And so the question then becomes, what do we do? And I think that for a lot of young people, we have people calling all the time talking about, what do young people like? And I tell them all the time, young people are so focused on money, because if you don't have money, you struggle. And if you struggle, they don't listen. And so it's just overall a very difficult issue. So I think for young people, it's one of those things that's like, dude, if I can do it, great. But I can't even worry about thriving because I'm so focused on surviving. And I do know we had a call.
Yeah, we had a caller. Caller, you're on the air. Welcome.
Good morning.
So, look, let me have you play it back again. We need to take the volume up on you. Okay, run it again.
What she said.
I'm gonna caller. I'm gonna have you say that again. Talk to us again.
It's not on.
Yeah, we still with you. I'm just having a little sound problem.
I'll tell you that you do.
Well, you're right. Landlords not doing their part, and they're still getting rent money, and we can change that, but it's going to take some work. And until we do change that, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many people realize that the problem is that we don't have enough people engaging in the fight and not knowing what they need to do. So when I think about younger people, as well as older folks who are around and know of the problems and still don't often know how to access a course of recourse in order to get some not only correction done, but in order to deal with it. And when I look at, I got 2 young people in the room, well, I got 3 young people, 4 of us young people in the room. And when I think about, even if they think about trying to get housing, it's one thing to think about how I'm going to do it, but they're not even thinking about the problems associated with it. When they give their best effort and think that they're doing the right thing, they're getting a place, they're going to pay rent, and then they find out they've been duped into a place that is unhealthy, then that's where the big challenge comes. Because when they go to figure out how do they push back, they run into a problem where it doesn't seem to be any help around. Young folks can't afford lawyers.
And discrimination is crazy.
And the discrimination, particularly for young people, and not only based on their ethnicity, but on their age alone. The assumption that our young people are bad, they're not bad. The falsity of trying to seem like, oh, you can't, oh, you don't want to get these young people in there because what? We imagine them as being terrible. And then when you add to that the already existing problem of adults, as you mentioned, being in places and having to pay their rent and not getting the kind of service that takes care of the place they're paying for, we got another problem. So what must we do? Everybody knows what the problem is. The thing is, what must we do? Well, one thing Ashley has shown in her own experience with her family is that they have been pushing back. And she's not quiet about it. I can tell you that. And even the politicals know she's not quiet about it, but they would wish she would. They trying to placate her, hoping she will be silent. But the truth is, there need to be a whole lot more Ashleys in Buffalo who just are not going to take it anymore. Who just won't let this situation stay the way it is. And caller, I kind of went. I hope I hit some of what you wanted to know, or we're bringing up. Oh. Caller, you know what I'd like you to do? If you could I don't know if you see my Facebook page. If not, I would really like you to call me because I want to talk to you further about a future show, digging into this conversation even more. I hear a lot in you, and I want to bring it for. I want to play it forward because we the people in this community, we only get juiced by each other. And I don't mean, telling tales, but I mean, expressing the pain that we feel and doing the protest because it's the pain that leads to the protest. When you hurt people say ouch. When people saying ouch, that's a form of protesting. I'm hurting. And the protest generally leads to you taking some kind of action. I want to talk about how we can build more action, sort of like what Ashley has been showing us. It takes some people who walk through the fire in order to help us know what we need to be aware of and possibly some of the things we need to do. So I want to thank you for your call and just thank you. I mean, everything anybody said is a matter of truth, and it's their truth. So thanks again for that call. This is a tough subject because there's so much emotion involved with it. There's so much legality stuff, legal stuff you have to deal with. And the unbelief, unless you ran into a problem, some people find it hard to believe. They don't even open up their feelings to have feelings for people who are in that kind of a situation. They act like, well, it's something you must have done.
Oh, well, they were never going to, regardless of the subject. You could never pander hard enough to somebody like that. It shouldn't have to be in it for you to get it.
And that's what our politicals do.
Treatment.
These electeds come from our neighborhoods where they know these problems exist. The problems are mounting because you get these little 50-cent landlords. What I mean by that, few people who go out and buy up some houses, don't fix them up, then they want to charge exorbitant rents, or they expect somebody to give them money to fix it up so they can make money. It's crazy. All these little pimping like landlords, people in the community, we need to call them out. We shouldn't be renting houses in order to make a living. We should be renting out our housing so people can have a living, and it should be reasonable. This trying to get rich off of people's backs, we need to say no. And to everyone who owns more than one home, look, you can have that, but you need to be really reasonable in your rent. If you're doing it because you want to be a fat cat, no, you're a fat something else. I can't say it on the air. So I just want to tell
it's the truth.
That's the reality. People are hurting. People shouldn't have to cry out their pain. People shouldn't have to be dragged through a showcase. Oh, look at this. We know it exists.
Well, that's the thing too, and it's like people will always say, well, and shout out to home because a lot of people that I like work at home. I need witness statements for home. One of my witnesses went on vacation out of the country, so that witness isn't back yet, so I can't use that person yet. But the thing about home is like they can file your complaint and make additional complaints. But one thing I want to make clear is like the nonprofits and the way that we're running to the nonprofits need to stop. The only reason I'm saying this is because the way that no one can advocate better than you. I sat there and waited for my case to be called repeatedly on multiple days, multiple times, right? The stories that are said, you do get people who sit there and will listen to the story because they're more interested to hear how the tenant has been abused because the tides are changing. This whole lifestyle of the landlord having the upper hand is changing. People are now able to report these things and they should go to court and advocate quite heavily. But the problem is people become so deterred by either the abuse they're experiencing within the relationship with the party who owns the home or a mixture of their social issues and that relationship. And they just feel like they can never advocate for themselves. They turn and go, well, where can I go to get someone to advocate for me? So then you go to these nonprofits and you fill out this paperwork and you sit there and you wait and you talk to an intake person and the person tells you like, hey, I can help you, but like,
I have to get
you're
back
going to
to
need
you.
legal assistance. And it's like, well, why are you not to knock everybody that's there? Because there's so many nonprofits that do amazing work. Home is one, but they are one. They are one of a few out of many. And we as a society have become too reliant on running to the nonprofit industrial complex for a resolution when we could just work together as neighbors, have a conversation with people who own property about reciprocal treatment, and probably get more done.
Well, that's certainly what nonprofits
Truthfully.
should be doing. They should be forging discussion at community level.
But not to push too many buttons,
Not-
right?
But see, that
You know,
they avoid that. I'm saying you really have to speak to the elephant
we
in
get
the
the
room.
grant money, we can't ask certain
See?
questions. We can't push certain things. That's the thing.
See?
It's like, I don't need you to stand up and say there's a problem next to me, sweetheart. I live there. I need you to help me find a way to fix my problem. Your way to tell me to fix the problem is not to reach out to free legal counsel in Western New York that also has tenant rights 223-B listed on their website. I mean, you guys are, what the nonprofits are educating and what even the free attorneys are putting on the website, it's like a cognitive dissonance.
Let me ask you something. Lorraine, Austin, y'all the young people in the room, y'all take the mics. Talk to us
I
about
think
housing.
that
What
is
do we need to know from y'all perspective?
Fight
What would
back.
you say?
I
Fight
think that
back.
it's this. It's that whether it's home, a nonprofit organization, a person, it doesn't matter as long as we're playing by a set of rules that don't help us. And so I think that we can go back and forth all day about home or personal, but it doesn't matter if the execution isn't going to do their job. There's no point.
But they're
in the process.
great at
And
what
so
they do.
I think
you know?
that we need to figure out what can we do as voters locally and nationally to make politicians won't make a change until the people that put them in offices are making it cry. The system only works this way because we let it, right? If we put these people in office, representative democracy, we need to put fire under these people to say, no, if you don't fix this, you won't see this seat again. Because then people listen, because now my livelihood is challenged. And so I hear a bunch of issues across Buffalo, but a common theme I see is that they get to the legal sector and they kind of just fizzle out. And then we don't hear about them again. We just talked about one in the lobby. There's a lot of issues in Buffalo that were brought up in this station who we didn't hear resolved, just kind of disappeared. And it's because the people in these seats are so comfortable. I don't need a platform or to address certain issues because you guys don't vote. So you're not putting me in office. I don't really what you're saying is just going through one ear and out the other because you don't. So I think we need to harness a political power to say if these changes are not made, no, my life is not going to change. Yours is. In these offices, there will be different people. And I think until we can come to a message or a conversation around that, I think it's great. But like we said, home can only do so much. We can only do so much.
Well, have you recognized what Buffalo is then if you say that? If you have said all that, then you must recognize we work in silos. We work in silos. We work in silos. Your friends have jobs
And
with
we
the
work
opposition,
silent.
right? Your friends have jobs with the opposition, so they know that they are set to placate once they get to a certain point.
Right.
Once
And-
you ask too many questions, it's time to reroute that
And
person.
you're right. And that's the challenge we have because we have to prove, we can assume that people mean well, but they don't necessarily do well. But we have to identify, we have to be clear on the identity. Can't be like, sound like, look like. We got to be, you hear me, people? If you bring something against someone, you better be clear and not have it where you mistakenly say something, people acting out on it, then you come back and say, oh, my bad. You don't know. You got to bring an honest testimony. Lorraine, your mic, however about housing, we're bouncing around, but I know everything we're saying is real. And I know listeners feel it. And I know there are a couple of worlds, those who have the responsibility, and then those who haven't reached it yet to be able to achieve taking on such a responsibility. But I'm gonna shut up, Lorraine.
Well, the nonprofit and stuff like that, this is actually the first time that I've actually heard of like home, because I don't live in Buffalo. I
Right.
live in a
Home
smaller,
is really good.
I live in
Yeah.
Lockport.
The
so I
sense
live
for
in a
housing
smaller-
opportunities made equal,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and they stand in the gap with tenants, and they protect landlords' rights too. They don't do nothing shady. They just call it like it is. And so if a landlord is on the wrong side of the issue, they will call it like it is, and they have some leverage they can take as far as they can, but there's not like they can just handle an individual
can't
case
reprimand.
legally and rep and all of that.
See,
Yeah.
back, well, like I just had an issue with a landlord maybe like 6 months ago about like I was eager to move into a place because it had been a lot of stuff going on. So I just settled for an apartment that was like a 2-bedroom, but like one of the bedrooms didn't have a window. So it didn't really count. So it was like $900 a month for rent. And I paid up, like I paid up before I moved in. But then stuff started falling apart, like the sink, the water pressure, the tub.
Mhm.
My house, the door was like not able to lock, and the maintenance man was a level 3 sex offender, and I had my child with me, like
That's
I wasn't
common.
protected.
Yeah.
And they were just coming in and out of my apartment.
Wow.
I don't know, can we say the names on there? Of like
No.
Or just say,
like a legal place that helps people who don't have like
Is it a nonprofit?
legal aid,
yeah, like not legal aid, like yeah, kind of like legal aid.
kind
not
of similar. Not legal aid, but for similar type of organization.
that. Right. I reported them for lead, and they had problems with lead like 5 years prior, and instead of fixing the issue, they just evicted and removed the tenants before me.
Mm.
So my daughter had to do a test for lead because when we lived in an apartment a couple years prior, they because of COVID and everything, they never did a checkup, so they had to come back in the house. In the house, everything was lead based, and so then he just started being like weird and just
Like when you start asking.
yeah, and he slid in eviction paperwork, and I fought it. And then I was like, never mind, I don't even want this apartment because like it's too much. But like I see where she's saying like
You got to fight back.
you got to fight back, and they make it kind of hard to do it. And off rip, I feel like when you go to court, it's automatically like the landlord is already a little bit more favored in the, you know, and it's just, I got far in it because, you know, I could prove that he just slid the eviction paperwork the same day that I had court. Like,
You see, and then you bring up, which is the gap I'm talking about, is that with a lot of the things we do with our call ourselves doing with young folks, we're not doing enough to help you get through where we know they're jam session. You know, like dealing with housing court, the type of agencies to go to. And that's why just as we try and win the attention of young people towards the electoral process, we need to do that about every process that affects your life. I mean, not only education, to make sure the track is clear, so at least you have the opportunity that nobody pulling a Governor Wallace on you, blocking the road. Y'all know who Governor Wallace was? Nah, that's for your time. He was an Alabama governor that when they were integrating schools, and the young lady that they wanted to take into the school, he and his allies, and you know, because he controlled the police force and stuff, gonna block the entrance and gonna let this little black girl come. And took federal troops to go down to have him step aside so that the girl could enter and go into school. And that's what I'm talking about, having people who block the road. In those times, it was because of your ethnicity. And it still is some of that today. But in housing, we had the same situation of people blocking the road of opportunity for young people. And not only for young people, for just the average working, living person just trying to make a living. You got a bunch of hustlers who think they realtors. I see all the time. Some of us are talking about they realtors, and it's like, yeah, that's your job, and your job is to make money. It ain't so much to care about people. Some of them deliver with care, but there's enough of them that need to be kicked to the curb, and that depends on people in our communities to talk about it. It's no different from having a nonprofit in the community that somebody else may think is, oh, it's great, but people in the community know it ain't nothing, you know. But we need to share that. We need to bring that up. We need to push back out in the clear so that we can begin to tear down these structures and remove these people. I don't want to get y'all in trouble. It just, but it, you know, that's what I find that most people are in the streets about. They're not in the streets because you're crazy. You're out there because you're trying to make a community in the world that works for all of us. Because the community and world we have now is excluding, unfair, got no room for you. You can't even see what path you can clearly go down without having to almost rumble. But I
Well,
advise you to
truth.
rumble.
It's
Yes,
like
sir.
whatever, and then it's a toss up of what story is most marketable and who do you want to hear it from. Like the reality is, like I will never not point people to a positive resource.
Okay.
Like, you know, big fan of home. Well, home's not going to slam that through the basketball hoop
No.
for you if you're in
Mm-mm.
housing court. You better take what they're teaching you and apply it when you go there. And a lot of times you'll see these attorneys work for large nonprofits. Their caseload is massive.
It's crazy.
They
That's
do
right.
not want to sit here. My attorney did not want to battle my landlord's attorney. I said, he told me to prepare to lose when I came in the last time. I said, we don't start our day off negatively. It's just not going to go that way. And wouldn't you know it, by the end of that hearing, it was a withdrawn case. And he was so shocked that it went positively. And it's like, sometimes you have to stand up for yourself.
You got that
Just
right.
because you're afraid of the judge, don't be a jester for the court, AKA a lawyer.
Well,
You know?
You're absolutely right. I know our time is about to.
It always goes
and I would thank you right now. And I'm glad you came, Lorraine, because and y'all should come back again. And listeners, we're gonna be continuing these kinds of conversations. Next week we're gonna have home on. And you really need to come prepared with your paper and pencil, pen, to take some real notes. Because we're not just talking the talk. We're not about entertainment. We're about entertainment. And if you hear it, you gotta let it get in you, and you gotta operate with it. Those are my final words, bro.
I'm gonna just say we have some more housing stuff to talk about. It's an issue that's gonna be around, that will continue to be around. If we continue to fight it, hopefully it won't be around forever. So stay tuned. Thank you guys for coming down.
Thank you.
And make sure you guys tune in next week. And if you want to join the conversation again, it's 716-837-1112. Thank you, Buffalo.
Indeed. You can bring